Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Yesterday was a pretty eventful night in the NBA. There were a lot of games that were played. The Oklahoma City Thunder played against the Bulls. They were victorious. The Brooklyn Nets beat the Dallas Mavericks. They were victorious. Boston beat Memphis. They won that game. The Clippers beat the Orlando Magic. They won that game. And of course, I think probably the latest game of the night, I could be wrong, one of the latest games of the night was between the Houston Rockets and the Los Angeles Lakers. It was a pretty close game. Actually, I watched most of it. It was a pretty close game. Came down to the final 2 minutes or so. But ultimately, the Lakers were able to come away victorious in that game with a 6-point victory. And for anybody that watched that game, you saw that a lot of it had to do with just players being cold all over the court. The Houston Rockets, Fred VanVleet, and these guys missed a lot of shots, a lot of open shots. They missed a lot from the 3-point line. Houston went 10 of 32. Now the Lakers were able to be more effective from the 3-point line. They went 16 of 46, and ultimately they ended up winning the game. Looking at the box score, Rui Hachimura had 7 points. LeBron had 16. Austin Reeves had 12. Luka had 20. Dorian Finney-Smith had 20. Gabe Vincent had 20. And J.J. Redick made it a point to play Gabe Vincent a lot of minutes. He played 23 minutes in that game. So it was a good win for the Lakers. Didn't have any impact on the Clippers and what they were doing, so whatever. So they won the game. And then I woke up this morning and I came across a segment here from Get Up. And they were there talking about what took place yesterday. And in typical ESPN fashion, they just went back to doing what they usually do, promoting false narratives. So Mike Greenberg out of nowhere then starts saying, man, are the Lakers relying too much on LeBron James? The reason he was bringing that point up was because LeBron has been like in a shooting slump. So he's saying like, because LeBron hasn't been playing well, does that mean that the Lakers are relying too much on him and is relying on a 40-year-old going into the playoffs, something that's going to work? Because it's never happened before. So for those of you who didn't hear what ESPN had to say, and these guys want to play it for you now, and I'm going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to this madness.
Let me go back to the Lakers, though. We opened the show with the highlight. They beat the Rockets last night. But this is very interesting. LeBron James is in, right now as we speak, a 7-game stretch in which he has not scored more than 25 points. That's the longest drought for him in a decade. LeBron has not been his team's leading scorer in any of those 7 games. And it does bring up an interesting question. And Wendy, I'll start with you on this, but I want everyone in on this topic. LeBron James and the Lakers are going to try to do something in the next few months that Hembo and I put our heads together this morning has legitimately only been done once in the history of major American sports, and that is rely heavily on a player 40 years old or older to win a championship. Tom Brady stands alone. He's the only player to do it. There have been 40-year-olds who've been contributors, but to depend on a player of that age as much as this team is going to depend on LeBron in the playoffs, it's only happened once before, and it's never happened in the NBA. So, Winman, you start the conversation there on perspective. LeBron coming back from the groin injury. We're talking about the 7 straight games here, how they handle the rest of this regular season. What's your take?
Yeah, I think the groin injury is what you're worried about because LeBron has had some soft tissue injuries over the last few years when he's been overused. I'm not worried about the scoring. You can really tie that to a slump in 3-point shooting. If you go back to, coming back from the injury, I think he's shooting 19% on threes. And the 3-pointer is an important part of his game, but offense is not the big thing for the Lakers. I know they'll score enough points to win. I want to see how they defend. And LeBron's defense has been good despite coming back from that groin injury. But that's what you're worried about. You're worried about overuse. And the thing about it is the Lakers' depth isn't tremendous. And you are going to need... it's hard to take LeBron out of the game when it's an important game. Coaches for 20 years have said that. Last night was a very important game. LeBron almost played 40 minutes. So it's a hard thing to do for J.J. Redick. But if he breaks down, they don't have a chance anyway. So they're going to have to ride him.
So, Jay, Will, you were making this point in our earlier conversation. When you see how much they needed from LeBron in particular to beat Houston last night, The idea that they're going to get through multiple 7-game series asking that much of a 40-year-old player it's a tough one. Again, it's literally never happened in NBA history. What's your thought on it, Jay Will?
Well, that's why I don't think the Lakers are going to come out of the West. And it's just not a LeBron thing. I think it's a team thing defensively due to the lack of personnel that typically they would need. I think they're still a piece away from getting over the hump. And it's the wear and tear and the cumulative effect of the war of attrition that you saw what they had to exert last night on the defensive end. And if that's happening against Houston, they're going to need more of that against OKC. And they're going to need LeBron, Luka, and AR to compete at a high level offensively. I just don't see that happening. It's not saying it can't happen. I think the probability is not in their favor to come out of the West.
So you heard what those guys had to say there. Now, let me tell you what these guys were doing. Essentially, what they were doing is they were hedging. All right? They were hedging. They were hedging on both sides. So on the one hand, they're saying that, and they've been saying the Lakers are fully capable of beating most of the teams, right? They can beat Houston. That was, they're good. They have some people on their TV up there saying they can beat them. But then on the other hand, if they lose, they say, oh, man, well, they're relying too much on a 40-year-old and this and this. So the question is then, so which one is it? Because LeBron's age is not going to change. He's not going to become 39 or 38. He's going to get older. So that hasn't stopped a lot of people in media to be sitting up there twerking it up all over the place, pouring honey all over each other, hollering, screaming, shaking their ankles, all kind of crazy stuff. That don't stop them from twerking. So all of a sudden now, why are you trepidatious about it? Continue twerking. Let them toss some ones at you and keep the music going. Why all of a sudden now you're afraid to twerk? I'm lost. You twerk heavily, daily, all the time, but now all of a sudden you're like, well, look, what Greeny was doing as well was trying to explain away his slump, and they were essentially saying that the reason he's in a slump is because they're relying on him too much, and that's not the reality. If you go back and look at this set of games that he's played since he's come back, Luka's been their number one scorer and their most aggressive player. Luka is enough of an offensive generator to generate enough offense for that team so nobody can feel like they're relying on LeBron. Luka scores 70 in a game. Like, let's stop. Luka can carry an offense by himself. And not to mention the fact they do have Austin Reeves. So I believe last time I checked, they said Austin Reeves is averaging, I heard he's averaging 20 this year. I've never looked at his stats, to be honest with you. Let me see how much Austin Reeves is averaging. He's averaging 20 points a game this year. So Luka is playing with another guy that's averaging 20. Plus another guy that's averaging 20 plus. What are we talking about here? But Luka's perfectly capable of kind of broke. I don't want to be arrogant and say we broke it because maybe somebody else discussed it. But we did a show. I believe we published this show on Saturday. And the title of the show was called Michael Wilbon Goes Ballistic on LeBron James for Attacking and Humiliating Bryant Windhorse on ESPN. The video did very well. And a lot of people kind of chimed in. Now, in that video, I was reading from an Outkick article that featured a sit-down that took place between Michael Wilbon and Outkick. I believe that was his first visit to Outkick. Outkick that's owned by Clay Travis, and I'm sure some of you know him. I believe Clay Travis used to work at ESPN, if I'm not mistaken, but although he didn't speak to Clay Travis. And they had this robust conversation where they were touching on a bunch of things. They were touching on players saying that they get criticized more today than they did in the past. He addressed the situation that took place on Pat McAfee with LeBron James. He then addressed Stephen A. Smith. He addressed just the toxic nature of media right now, essentially calling out his own network, right? But towards the tail end of this read, it's a very long read, but very, very interesting. There was a part where he began to talk about Bronny James and the coverage of ESPN, of Bronny James, and how he believes that ESPN is essentially using sensationalism of Bronny and promoting him simply to get clicks and views. And he believes that that's something that is watering down the product that is ESPN and the entire industry of sports media. So these are the comments that we want to get into right now. There was a story somewhere about ESPN and FS1 covered Bronny more this season than SGA, the front runner for MVP, Wilbon. That's right. I didn't even think about it, about that. It's true. They talk about him more than SGA. That's pandering. It's all pandering. Let me be clear. Our business is a piece of S. A lot of the days. There's nobody enforcing standards or having tough conversations. This is what happens when you no longer have functioning newsrooms because everyone is working from hotel rooms, from their bedrooms, and maybe even from their beds. People are not in newsrooms anymore or in a studio where you can tell them and call them out on their BS. That's a problem. Instead, there's a bunch of 20-year-olds pitching stories and spending all day on social media and reinforcing each other's BS. It's 100% pandering. And I hate it. You know this, Bobby? You see it. But again, I was not critical of LeBron as a dad at all. I feel differently about this than most. I get it. However, Tony and I didn't need to talk about it publicly. Tony understands it. His son, Michael, works for him. But we aren't talking about Bronny every day. Hell no. This isn't about Stephen A. It's an entire industry. That's what I want to remind LeBron. Our business is just SHI, you know what, some days. It just is. So you heard what Wilbon had to say. What are my thoughts on this? Yes, they're talking about Bronny James for clicks and views, but we need to be honest about this for a second. There are a lot of people talking about this in bad faith. A lot of bad faith actors out here. A lot of bad faith. And what I mean by bad faith is these guys are pretend like they know what's true, but they pretend to not understand what's going on. So they put out false or they put out disingenuous comments about the situation. For example, they'll ask you, look, why do you talk about Bronny so much? Why do you talk about a 55th pick so much? Right? Why do you talk about a 55th pick? But then do you know what happens? The same people asking you this, if Bronny does something well, they'll be the same ones to talk about him. They'll praise him on their shows and all of this stuff. And then the question then becomes, you're asking me, why am I talking about Bronny? But here we have an instance of you talking about Bronny. Why are you talking about a 55th pick? Why are you praising a 55th pick? Why are you handing out lollipops for a 55th pick? And then there's no answer. And they'll say, because this is what they'll say, you're only talking about Bronny for clicks and views. Okay, so what are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? Or let me guess. Let me get this straight. You decided to go into your studio today, call up everybody, set up your entire camera, set up everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend 20 minutes or whatever on a segment that's not going to generate any views or any income because we're stupid. Who does that? Everybody is in the business to make money, positive or negative. Where you lose me is where you try to act like that's not what you're doing too. That's where you lose me. Because the same people asking you, why are you talking about a 55th pick, are usually asking that question because you said something that probably isn't positive. But if you said something that's positive, there's no need to ask the question. Because in their minds, what you're doing is, oh, you're highlighting a young kid. So what they're saying essentially is just positive comments. If you say anything negative, you're going to be branded as a hater, number one. Number two, we're then going to turn around and ask you this question, which is, why are you talking about a 55th pick? Because what they're essentially saying, it's implied, and I'm perspicacious to all of these games, is you're only talking about Bronny James for clicks and views. Now we get to the Wilbon comments, because Wilbon is saying everybody's talking about him for clicks and views. But those that are speaking positively of him are saying, no, that's not what we're doing it for. We're doing it because we just want to promote positivity. It's like, nah, bro, you're doing it to make money. You're doing it to make money, or you're promoting positivity while making money. But you're pretending like you're not, because I'm saying nice things about the person. So therefore, we're not really doing this to make money. We're just doing it because we love them. Really? Then why turn on the camera and do it? Just do it for free. What's the overhead for that day? To be wasting topics, doing topics that make no money. Who does that? Nobody. So we have that aspect of it. In terms of the clicks and views part about it, look, Bronny is primarily getting attention because who his father is. Right? So when people ask you, when are they talking about a 55th pick? The question then becomes, when was the last 55th picks or the last 55th picks or whatever, their fathers been the face of the NBA? When would that happen? Never, right? Never. If the 55th pick was Chris Paul's son, do you think they'll be talking about him as much? No, of course not. The reason they're talking about Bronny is because he's LeBron's son. And LeBron is the face of the NBA. LeBron is famous, and therefore by proxy, Bronny is famous. But they know this already. They are fully aware of it. As a matter of fact, because Bronny is LeBron's son, it's one of the reasons they support him as much as they do, because they're LeBron supporters. So they're fully aware of this. Essentially, what they're saying is, and they're trying to ask you is, you're only talking about Bronny to make money. That's where all of this is going. And the question I have to ask you is, what do you talk about that is not meant to make money? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. They're all doing it to make money. Don't let nobody fool you. Ain't nobody up here doing sports content for free. Nobody's doing it. Everybody has bills. But they're trying to act like as if that's not what they do on a daily basis. Why do you talk about anything that you talk about? Aren't you talking about it to make money? Of course they are. But they want to act sanctimonious because they know if they say that, the people are going to they're using them to make money, when in reality, that's what they're all doing. Now, to the point that Michael Wilbon is highlighting, ESPN doing it for clicks and views. Of course they're doing it for clicks and views. It's sensationalism. Of course they are. Of course they are. They're doing it for clicks and views. Of course they are. But the difference between ESPN and a lot of independent guys, ESPN will essentially have people up there twerking it up all day long. It's the independent guys that are going to give you a balanced opinion. And the minute one of those situations occurs where an ESPN analyst gives an honest take or a take that may be a little bit critical, you get a situation like LeBron running up on Stephen A. Smith. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Kobe Bryant. I spoke about him yesterday on the channel as I was reacting to some comments that Charles Barkley had to make on the Dan Patrick show, where he was essentially saying that Kobe is one of the three greatest players he's ever seen, right? He said there have been three guys that play basketball in extremely, like at the highest level. And he said it's Kobe, LeBron, and Jordan. So we produced that show essentially to kind of just put the narrative out there or counteract some of the narratives that have been propagated over the years that Kobe wasn't this, Kobe wasn't that. It's something that seems to bother some people. Now, some of you may ask, oh, man, you're a Kobe fan. Why don't you talk about Kobe? Let me answer this question in this way. We started producing content around 2019. Okay. In 2019, Kobe had already retired by then. Now, we did have some Kobe Bryant related shows, quite a few then. But what happens when a player retires is they're not as relevant. They don't usually make news. If we started covering basketball, let's say in 2008, I would talk about Kobe every single day. Every single day. Because he's playing. So when a player is not playing anymore, they're not relevant. How much news can I talk about with Michael Jordan? Does Michael Jordan play anymore? The reason I don't talk about Kobe is there's no new news. What news is there for me to discuss? So when I get some new comments on him, I'm going to talk about him. Because I know these are some LeBron. Oh, but we talk about, because he's playing now. He's relevant. Now, it would be one thing if Kobe was playing now and LeBron was playing now. I wouldn't waste my time talking about LeBron. I'd be talking about Kobe. But he's not playing. So therefore, he's not relevant. That's all. Like, some people felt like, oh, I got you. You didn't get nothing. So I just wanted to kind of get rid of that point. Now, I want to get to a larger point here. If you know anything about Kobe, you knew that he was extremely driven. One could make an argument that he was the hardest working player to ever play in the NBA. You could make an argument like that he was like he had the greatest work ethic of any player to ever play the sport. This is something that Michael Jordan hasn't been in awe of, something that Dwayne Wade, LeBron, Carmelo, all of them have been in awe of Kobe Bryant's work ethic, right? So he was a dedicated worker. But the question is, what was he working for? And Kobe always made it clear, even from the early stages of his career, his goal was to win championships. That was his primary focus, winning championships. That was what always drove him. I heard that Kobe wanted to get 6. I was also hearing that Kobe wanted to get 7 to win more championships than Michael Jordan. So this morning, I came across a pretty interesting article from basketballnetwork.net. And it had the following title. It says, "Just give me a 6th ring, damn it." Kobe Bryant's reaction when asked about breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record. So let's get into what this article says. This article is actually sourced from an ESPN article. It says, "The late Lakers great Kobe Bryant was determined to prove that he was better than Shaquille O'Neal. After the two parted ways in 2004, Bryant wanted to prove that he could win without Shaq. So after Shaq won his 4th championship in 2006, Kobe topped that with his back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010. 2 years later, on February 6, 2012, the Black Mamba passed Diesel as the 5th all-time leading scorer in NBA history. But at that point, Kobe was no longer eager to one-up his former tag team partner. He was obsessed with a far greater goal. After the game where he scored his 28,601 career point and became the 5th best scorer in the league, Bryant was asked about passing Shaq and his thoughts about passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record. Kobe's mind was locked in on something bigger. "I just want number 6, man," Bryant said. "I'm not asking for too much. Just give me a 6th ring, damn it." Chasing MJ, at 33 years old, Bryant was no longer after scoring records or individual accolades. At that point, he only had 1 MVP award, but he didn't say he wanted more such trophies. He wanted one more Larry O'Brien. A 6th NBA title would have put Kobe at par with Michael Jordan, and although MJ was a perfect 6-0 in the finals, being a 6-2 would have Kobe right up there with his idol in the greatest of all time discussion. But as former teammate Meta Sanford Artest said, Kobe wanted ring number 6 probably a little bit too much, so he tried to force it and it failed. After Kobe got 5, he wanted number 6. You could see it in his eyes. He wanted number 6. So there were games when we were up after the finals in the playoffs up, by 7 points or 10 points with a minute left. Instead of letting it happen naturally to get to the finals, I think Kobe wanted it too much, Meta said in his appearance on the OG's podcast. And then the article then goes on to say that, Kobe was at peace with winning his 5th. So why am I talking about this? The reason I'm talking about this is it's important to shed more light on Kobe's career and his mindset. There was a year, I forgot what year it was, where Kobe Bryant had an opportunity to win the scoring title over Kevin Durant. And I think Kobe ended up sitting out 1 or 2 games and giving up the scoring title. And then Kevin Durant ultimately won the scoring title. Now, why did Kobe do that? Is it because Kobe Bryant didn't like to score? No, it's not. Kobe liked to score the ball. He could score the ball. I think the reason Kobe did that was because it wasn't his focus anymore. I think Kobe thought in his mind that the only way he would be able to assure that him and Jordan were considered to be on the same level is to win more championships. He understood that. Now, why did Kobe have that particular obsession over everything else? The reason Kobe had that obsession was because the person he looked up to the most, in Michael Jordan, that was his obsession. And as a matter of fact, we did a show where they asked Michael Jordan about passing Kareem scoring record, and Jordan said, if it was my goal to pass Kareem's scoring record, I would have played more seasons. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to win championships. So I'm saying all this to say that there are other great players that their primary focus was winning and nothing else compared. Nothing else compared, because they know ultimately that will be the ultimate judge of who they are. Because Kobe said he wants to be able to walk into a room and sit down with Magic and Michael and Kareem and all of these guys and belong there. And with 5 championships, he absolutely belonged there. So this is the reason we're producing this show, just to show that other players had different mentalities than what you hear today being propagated in the media. Today, we're going to be talking about what took place on ESPN First Take not too long ago. So yesterday, there was some critical games that took place in the NBA. We're just going to focus on the Western Conference because, frankly, the Western Conference is more interesting than the Eastern Conference. And let me tell you what happened. So after all the games were played yesterday, this is where things currently stand. OKC is number 1. That's not changed. They've won 10 games in a row. They're fantastic. So they're the class of the West. Then you have the Houston Rockets, who played the Lakers. They lost that game. So the Houston Rockets is still a number 2 seed. Trailing them is the Denver Nuggets at the number 3 spot. And then you have the Lakers, who've won 2 games in a row. They're at the number 4 spot. And I think they've put some healthy distance between themselves and the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, incidentally, a very important game is going to take place tonight, because the Warriors are going to be playing against the Grizzlies. So whoever loses that game is going to drop. So Memphis is most likely, or Golden State is going to drop to well, actually Golden State can drop all the way down to the 8th seed. Right now that it's 6th seed, it can drop to the 8th. Now some people say, well, how can they drop to the 8th? Because the Lakers have the season tiebreaker, I believe, thus far on the Warriors. I think we'll have to see. Then of course you have the Timberwolves at number 7. Then you have the Clippers at number 8 and all of that. So things are really close. And the Mavs, Kings, those guys are tied for losses. So there's a lot of movement taking place there. But anyway, after the game last night, the Lakers were able to beat the Houston Rockets. And I knew that we were going to discuss this today on ESPN First Take. And of course, Shannon Sharp was going to be in attendance. And what does that mean? Whenever there's a topic with Shannon Sharp and LeBron James, there's always going to be a lot of twerking that went on. But today, it looked like Stephen A. Smith actually had like enough. He's like, bro, enough is enough with this twerking. Like, enough is enough with it, with this constant capping and all. Like, analyze what you're seeing, and like a lot more. We need a little bit more in that analysis, a little less twerk. And this is what created this kind of a heated back and forth between these two guys. So what we want to do is we want to play the exchange between Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp now. And I'm going to come back and react to their commentary. Take a listen to that there.
Well, that person that they normally hand the ball to, Stephen A., and says, okay, go get us a bucket, is Jalen Green. And he, as you mentioned, he struggled shooting the basketball from the floor. And if I'm not mistaken, he might have gotten benched, or maybe it's something going on, because I didn't see him a whole lot in the fourth quarter. And so with that being said, it doesn't tell me anything. I already knew everything I needed to know about the Lakers. I already knew everything I needed to know about the Houston Rockets. That's why I told you. And you see last night, Stephen A., the Rockets, they got an amen, but we had the benediction. 2 free throws and a huge block. You see how we dismissed it? We let everybody go. You know there's a difference between an amen and a benediction. You know when they give the benediction, it's over. Y'all have a good night. Y'all have a good evening. Go home and watch your favorite sporting event. Eat some turkey and dressing.
There you go with your nonsense. There you go with your nonsense, the benediction.
Now you want to talk about you bloviating about it. That's why I'm not concerned. That's why every time you mention somebody, I let everybody know what it is. It's in 5. It's on. And
I have no objectivity.
That you had last night, Stephen A., I do have objectivity.
With
the Lakers didn't even, you talk about what Houston didn't do offensively. Look at the Lakers struggling. Luka struggled shooting the ball. LeBron struggled shooting the ball. As a matter of fact, LeBron has only shot 50% once since he's been back off that injury. Mm-hmm. That being said, Austin Reeves struggled. Last night, the only 2 guys really that played exceptional was Dorian Finney-Smith and Gabe Vincent. Now, Vando came in and gave us some huge defensive, and they played really well defensively. But I'm not concerned. That's why I let you do all that talking. And we got something for you know who. I don't want to mention their name. But we got something for them in a back-to-back.
But this is the thing that kills me. You act like there's nothing to be concerned about with your Lakers. I mean, when they were struggling defensively over the last several weeks, looking like one of the poor defensive teams in the NBA, you just glossed over that. That doesn't matter to you. I'm looking at the Houston Rockets right now. We've all recognized throughout the year, even as they climbed to a number 2 seed, there was something missing. And it showed last night. But I still believe in these cats. I still believe they got a kind of potential to make a series very, very interesting. I think they're a very talented team. I think they're a piece away from winning the championship, to be quite honest with you. But when you look at the Los Angeles Lakers, at least I'm being objective about it, Shay. Your behind sits up there with the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't know. What you say? What you say about Lakers at 5? What did you say about it? Who knows what you gonna come up with next when it comes to that stuff? It don't matter. Even when we mentioned OKC, you talk about Lakers at 5.
I'm listening. Tell me.
So you heard the exchange. Now, what Stephen A. Smith was alluding to is something that I've been saying going all the way back to Shannon Sharp's days on FS1. I have always said that I believe that Shannon Sharp is excellent, funny, and all that stuff. He's great. I always said that. But I also said that I take Shannon Sharp seriously with almost everything he says, except when it comes to his basketball takes as it pertains to LeBron and anything LeBron related. Because when it comes to his LeBron James takes, there's no objectivity. There's no actual analysis. It's just a bunch of twerking and hollering and screaming. Just up there twerking it up. Ankles just lathered in honey, right? Slipping all through the hallways. Just hollering and screaming. And what usually ends up happening is that after a while, it gets annoying. See, at first, it was funny because it's funny. You know, to go James. But as time goes on, it's like, okay, can we get like a substantive take on this, please? Like, I get it. You think it's funny and all that. But after a while, like, can we get more than these jokes? And then what you quickly begin to realize is that Shannon never gives you a serious analysis of LeBron James. Sometimes he does, like after the game that they lost to the Bulls, but usually, most cases, he doesn't. And 90% of the cases, he doesn't. When they have these GOAT debates, he's not being serious. He's not being serious. There is no argument that Shannon Sharp can make to say that LeBron is better than Michael. There is none. And he knows it. And we're not talking about somebody that did not see the Chicago Bulls Jordan. He saw Jordan. You know there's no argument, but nevertheless you do it anyway. And you put a battery in the back of some of his minions, twerking ass minions all over the internet, and then they run around hollering and screaming and slapping each other while honey running up and down the hallway talking about LeBron James to go. It's because of people like that. Now, Stephen A. Smith is saying, give me a serious analysis, for God's sakes. I get it. You like LeBron and all that, but give me a serious analysis looking at the Western Conference landscape. You're talking about OKC in third. Like, what are you talking about in 5? What are we saying right now? Like, what are we saying? Even if we're saying this, OKC doesn't have the experience. Well, we're not talking about a team that's going to the playoffs for the first time. This group has pretty much been together for some years. They went to the playoffs last year. They played and they lost. But the point I'm making is that by just dismissing them and so, go James. What kills me is that Shannon talks like as if LeBron has 10 rings. He has 4 rings. You're acting like he has 10. You're acting like as if the minute he gets into the playoffs is a done deal. He has 4 rings. But you're making it seem like this dude is freaking Bill Russell or somebody. He has 4 rings. But you talk like as if it's Michael Jordan is going into the playoffs. The amount of confidence and all, like, where are you getting all of this from? Number one. Number two, if you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have an incredible home record. They have an incredible road record. They're the best defense in the NBA. They're number one in a lot of the key categories in terms of defensive deflections and all of that. You think it's a fluke all the way to the end of the season? Now, some people say with the lack of experience, eventually a young team wins. Eventually a team that doesn't have experience will gain enough experience to win. Eventually. You can't use that as something to say, well, they don't have experience. After a while, you can't use that. But even if we don't know what OKC is going to do in the playoffs, at least give a more robust and balanced analysis. If not for yourself, for the audience. Because when you give these watered down, ridiculous analyses, you're watering down the brains of the listeners. You're not doing them any favors because they'll listen to that and say, oh man, yeah. But then in here, you didn't say nothing. You didn't say nothing. So where's the deep thought in all of this is being said? And that's why you got a bunch of people that just holler, run around screaming, go James. They don't have an argument to back it up, an argument to save their life. So after a while, it's like, yeah, I get it. It's funny. But after a while, like, can we be serious, please? Like, please.